You'll see it.
We're going to play, so everybody's got the horns with them anyway. Jazz rhythmic modifications and melodic phrasing. Okay? You go ahead and start to read, and we'll play. Then read below. Keep going. So, there's the same tune written 4 different ways. And you'll find it, and your students will find it that way. And it all means the same thing. The current way to notate swing jazz rhythm is number 1. Throughout the last 40 years, we've gone through trying to write triplets, which is not accurate as well. Dotted eighths and sixteenths, which is not accurate either. Or a mixture of dotted eighths and sixteenths. It can be very confusing to students, because jazz is an oral art. So it says, you see all the above. If you buy an older arrangement of the swing tune, it comes out of dotted eighths and sixteenths. You buy a current one, and it's 8 notes. So we give you some general guidelines. Rhythmic modifications we'll deal with first. Slow tempo, if in 4/4, convert 12/8. Medium tempo, modify the rhythms more towards straight eighth than the triplet. Fast tempo, almost all straight eighths felt 2 beats to the bar. So what we're saying is, as the tempo increases, the rhythmic modification changes more towards even eighth notes until you get to bop, which is fast. Then it's all even eighth notes. So we start with, all these are the same. And also the current grouping, contemporary, is to look for 3s and 5s in your grouping, not 2s. Sounds dated. Sounds like the way they played the 30s. Where in the 30s, that's why when you hear Lawrence Welk, if you get him over here, the bubble music and all that stuff, it sounds dated because they play the swing rhythms all the same like they did in the 30s. Whereas contemporary, we're going to go, see, it's not towards the triplet at all. And then you have different styles. The big band of Count Basie versus Woody Herman versus Buddy Rich versus Mel Lewis. They all have their characteristic modifications as obviously determined by the leader. That's that. So, there's not the same rhythmic modification. It changes with tempo. It's the first concept. And we're looking for 3s and 5s. Rather than, which is kids will usually start to do, just play 2s. So you have to fix that up right away. And we have certain terminology coming out of the jazz idiom, which is like ghost notes. Ghost note is a very familiar term in the States as referring to jazz. A ghost is like, you picture with that cartoon thing. It's there, but it's not there. So by ghosting, we mean to play the notes really lightly. So I'm going to ghost the 2nd and 3rd notes in the phrase grouping of the number 1. They're not equal. Fa, day, do, da. So I'm playing. If you play 2s, then, and you want a 2 feel, then you either ghost the notes on the beat or off the beat. So you get an off the beat feel or an on, if you're going to play 2s. So I'm ghosting the off beats. And it has an on the beat feel. Most people feel like, all jazz is syncopated. No, there's a legitimate on the beat feel in jazz. Or I'm going to ghost the notes on the beat. So you get So if you play twos, you got to do one of the two ghosts. Otherwise, there's nothing bad with that. It just sounds like you're playing in 1930, late 20s, early 30s style. It's dated, rather than being in the contemporary jazz idiom. So that pretty much deals with rhythm. What's to say down the bottom? Due to the rhythmic modifications of the eighth note, syncopation should be treated differently than in classical notation. Isolated upbeat eighth notes, or the last upbeat eighth note in a series, should be felt as early downbeats, even though they appear mathematically as the latter part of the previous beat, helping to achieve the laid-back feel in the slower modern tempo. Now, what do we mean by that? So turn the page over. I'm thinking that last eighth note is an early third beat. The last eighth note in bar one is an early downbeat. All right, just click your finger. Two. See how close I am to your clicking on the upbeat? Very much further placed than what we do in classical music. Now most, I have in the States with working with school groups, or even my college students, who are rock oriented, even eighth note art, because that's the world they live in. So we have to go back and find the roots of jazz. So this goes back just to the roots of certain concepts. We're not going to write a whole book on jazz. Do-ba-do-do, do-do-do, do, sing. Do-do-do-do, now see you early. Do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do. Just sing the first three notes and put that last eighth note close to your click. Ready? Go. Do-do-do-do, still early. Do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do, see how close I am? Do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do, again. Do-do-do-do. Now the other thing is, if we make accents, there's a tendency to bring the note in early. So don't make an accent, just play it short. Do-do-do-do, ready? And do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do, do-do-do, do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do. All right, now 1, 2, 3, 4. Do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do, do-do-do, do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do. Again, as we get faster, don't bring the notes in early. Do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do, do-do-do-do. Okay, so read what I said there. Look for a mixture of subphrases and groups of 3, 4, 5 tones. See example 4B down the bottom, okay, which we'll get to in a minute. If eighth notes are to be grouped into a series of two-tone groups, the inflection and styling should be one of the following two choices: ghost, off, or on. That's what I just demonstrated a moment ago. If tones are played in groups of 2 with no inflection or use of ghost tones, the style will sound very dated and musically dull. So if we take in jazz, as I said the other day when I played with a year with a Benny Goodman Ghost Band, there was not an accent or anything written. It's all done by ear, and everybody just does it. And we'll get to some of those principles in a minute. So we have written, I'm going to play 3. And of course this is critical. Everything I'm doing is on the ear. I'm not doing my tongue. If you watch the front of my shirt. Really see that? It's all here. My tongue is just barely touching the reed. It's all in here. You can't play classical without this either, but you certainly can't play any jazz song at all without using this, because it's all done on the ear. And remember, I pointed out this is the way Mother Nature built this. This is the way we speak. This is the way we make inflection with words. But it's so subtle you don't feel it until you what? When you get angry, you yell at somebody. What do you feel? You feel the activity of the diaphragm making the sounds that you're yelling at somebody. Hey, it bounces here. And then you feel nuance. So all we're doing is taking the natural way that Mother Nature built this to be expressive and just applying it to when this or singing. That's simple. What brought them on? Eddie. Oh. Well, we're going to gurgle when we play. It'll whack up the... Okay? So I could play, already demonstrated off and on the beat. We don't do that again. So, next concept. Instrumentally, all quarter notes on or off the beat and also tied are played short, unless marked long with a line. So we're going to play 5 without any articulations being there. So it's written that way, and we're going to play it that way. If you wanted to write it out, then it would look like the next one. Or short. So that's the next concept. There are occasions when there will be a long note interpreted in there, and usually the ranger at that time, or the lead trumpet player who sets the articulation, you'll follow whether he or she does. You just have to listen to what's going on. As conductors and musicians, we must all struggle with interpretation of jazz notation as it evolves to try and represent the true expression of the music. So with those few details, let's take, I wrote a little etude, just a unison thing. Find your key, right? You've got a concert in octaves, then B flat treble, E flat, turn the page, you've got F treble for horn, and you've got high and low bass clef treble. Okay, so let's play. We're going to play 3 different tempos, and we're going to experiment with changing the rhythmic modification as the tempo gets faster. So we're going to start in 12/8, thinking triplets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Dum, ka-dum, ding, dum, ding, ka-dum. It would be the ride symbol, right? Ding, ka-dum, ding, ka-dum, ding, ka-dum. 1, 2, 3, bop, ba. That's just a little faster. 1, 2, 3, 1. Ready? So don't play. Bop, do, wad up, do, wad up. Now, Clark Terry, who's one of my favorite jazz trumpet players, wrote a book called The Language of Jazz. And he's a great scat singer. Great scat singer. Great sense of humor. And he wrote a book with another fellow years ago called The Language of Jazz. And he uses, and I borrowed a few things from his book, for 2 eighth notes, he uses wah, W-H-A, D-O-T, wad up, with his students when he does clinics to get them to lay back on that 8th note so it doesn't go wad up. So we do, wad up, do, wad up, do, wad up, wad up. That gives the feel of the wad up. One, sing that. Ready? And do, wad up, lazy. Do, wad up. Do one, do one. All right, let's play it. Can I play a little bit, warm up? Now, the same thing holds true. We rarely play bold notes in jazz. Rarely play bold notes. They occur in the same place as classical music. Final last climaxes, last notes of pieces, something, unless it says it has a connotation there, passante or something, then you play heavy, long. But that's not the norm, that's an exception. So the accent is always going to be accent taper. You've never played. So as you hear that, you say, that doesn't sound right. Something wrong with that. You just don't play that way. All the accents are them. And the other thing is we have in jazz what's called the long short note or the short long note. One or the other. So the first note is a quarter note and short, right? But it's not the staccato. It's not, that sounds crazy. So the slower the tempo, similar to classical music, we play a long, short note. It has the sense of being short, but it has a little length to it. And it sounds. All right, let's play the first 4 bars, that tempo. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Triplets, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Now, with strings, it's very difficult to get strings to swing because the bow is different than this. We're phrasing off of this, and they're phrasing off of that. It's 2 different things. So you got to plan the length of your bow. Ba, do, and don't hang over. Do, and you have a little accent on that, and then ease back on the sound. Here we go. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. There. And there's a classical little rhythm with the short notes. Keep the same length in your mind. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. Feature the 4 accented notes. 1, 2, 3, and 4. A lot of people think that everything's got to be syncopated. That's an on-the-beat figure there. I wouldn't play unless it was written that way. Unless the arranger wanted the offbeat feel, then the accent's going to go on the offbeat. I'd put it on the beat. Now right there, do up, and be very lazy on the next. The second 8 goes what? Is an early second beat. Doesn't belong at all inflection-wise with the first beat. It's an early 2. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. Yeah, that was nice. More ghosting. Just touch those notes. Just touch those notes. Hardly play them. Play that lick. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can on 3. Really ghost them. Hardly play them. Give you 3, 4, 1, 2. 3, and 4, and 1. That's as a group, that's a nice ensemble sound. It's swinging very nicely. Then you have, this is not a pure triplet. Play that the second bar of the second time of the first time bar. Second bar, bo do bum wow ding, and goes the middle note. I want to hear it. I just want to hear the first and the third. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1. Still too much in the second note with some of it. Some of you have it perfect. Don't make it any softer. The rest of you just touch the note. 3, 3, and 4, and 1. And use your sternum. I'm doing dub D right here. Dub D. Play the triplet from here. 3, and 4, and 1. Yeah, on the triplet. That's it from here. But I want you to really feel. I want to feel the 2 accents. 3, and 4, and 1. Again. 1, 2. All right. So that's basically what at that tempo. Now, what happens when we go here? It's not a pure triplet. It's modified more towards the even 8th note. Right? You get it? 1, ba, 1, da, do, one, up, do, day, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Don't hold that note out like that. Some of you. The rest of you did it right. Do, do, da. So that goes. Let it sit there beautifully, but don't push it. Kids in the state amateur bands, they want to pull and tug at every note. Every note goes, no, you can't do that professionally. Just hit that note. Isn't that good? Right? Unless it's got some markings on it, but you're not going to pull and tug at each note. What it does, it breaks up the line. It ruins the line totally. You start taking one note, and what you're doing is exaggerating it in its placement in the beats, right? You go, it actually breaks the phrasing. Same thing in classical music. I can remember my teacher years ago complaining about one of the oboe players at the Met he was playing with. She went after every note. He says, "You're nuts sitting there. It's interrupting the line." Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. It still goes. I don't care the tempo. Don't change your playing because the tempo's faster. Right on that bar 5. I want to just touch the 2 middle notes. 3, 1, 2, 3. On the beat feel. 1, goes the second note. 1, 2, 3. Very nice. All right, 1, 2, beginning, new tempo, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. We're getting early again on that last note. Don't be early. Da 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 da. Be lazy. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Now we're slowing down. Why? Because you're not thinking in the patterns. Always patterns. Never single notes. So that's what happens. All right. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. That the short long note or the long short note now getting shorter as the tempo in length, right? At a slow tempo was longer. Now as we get faster and faster, it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And enough tempo, quick notes, overplayed. With the amount of sounds labored. Same thing in concert music. For the audience, it sounds we're really struggling to play that. So the faster the tempo, the lighter you play. Or that's what happens. We just slowly get so bogged down that you play lighter. Play lighter. 1, play lighter, faster the tempo. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. The whole world plays too loud. Because all the professional bands I play with, we don't play loud. We all have a great tone. We have big sound, but we don't play loud. The tone itself is rich and resonant and full, but it's not loud. We work for this, playing light. As soon as it's faster and faster and faster, I play lighter and lighter and lighter, but with a nice full sound. All right, in 2, 1. Now, you reach a point in swing jazz where the tempo, you can't play with 4 to the beat. You have to go into augmentation, and then you just switch over to 2. Up, bang, do da. Ding-doo-dum, ding-ding. We're approaching that point now. 1, so instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 1 and 2 and 1, that tempo. 1, 2, a 1 and 2 and. Now let's go on to the bop here, even faster yet, in 2. But even 8 notes, but with those jazz inflections. 1, 2, a 1 and 2. And more ghosting. It's too many. It's too playing. Too playing. I want to hear all the notes. Equal. Here we go. 1, 2, a 1 and 2. Feels different, right? It sounds good, but it feels different, right? So it's good to go through this so you have experienced this and you can help your students. If you're doing a concert band with a little swing melody, you probably wouldn't do in the bop era, but we've got that medium slow and medium a lot of times. Ralph Faulkner's got a couple of really nice pieces with the little swing tunes for band. Well written. There's somebody else. What's the riff tune? Crocodile something? No. I don't know. There's one famous one everybody plays out here all over the country.
Wombat Shuffle.
Yeah.
Wombat Herring.
A Wombat Shuffle.
Yeah. So that's really just the essence of it. Again, you apply your own musicianship to what you're doing. But at least you have those of you that don't have a background in jazz. You have some concepts to help you. And so when you go back and you look at 230s, 337, and you look at go back to 337, and you look at 1, 2A and 2B, you know, and you realize that it's all the same, and you're going to see all that written from different publishers. And it can be very confusing to students, very confusing. And I'll have to deal with that the first jazz band at Melbourne next week after next, at the NYM camp. And I'll basically have to teach all this, because they're going to come in rockorians, and they're going to swing like a dead monkey.
Okay.
Takes a little, but I'll have them going by Friday. We'll really swing well, really very musical, and I'm just doing in their head. Got to teach them the phrase in the head, and the horn will take care of itself. If they come in with the proper grade level, it will be just fine, because it's all imagery. It's all playing by ear. And I think that's enough on that. It's 10:00. Why don't you stop? Do you hear? I hear. You read the other day, right? An extremely important aspect of conducting. We can't assume. How many times I hear conductors say, you know, listen to each other and play. Well, you know, because I'm sitting over there, I can't hear. The brass is playing in the back of my head. All I see is this. I hear a damn thing. So, I mean, you got to be aware of things in the wind band too, depending where you're seated. I mean, it's very nice to say that, but you have to understand that you've all played in ensembles. You know what you can hear, what you can't hear. Sometimes you'll isolate, have people play not for rehearsal, but just to have them hear each other so they know if they're spread out. So we won't reread that. We won't revisit that. But do you hear? Right here, like the percussion is in the back. They're the worst seat in the house. They're guessing how loud they're playing. Guessing. So next week you've got to help them, as they're behind the sound of the band. So often in the orchestra, I play by intuition. I can't hear everybody literally like you can. You're the only one up the front that gets a sense of everything. Everybody else within the ensemble hears bits and pieces. And professionally, how often you guys that play professionally play by intuition, by feel? Because you can't hear. So you and I have to be aware of that when we're conducting, when we're rehearsing, and make whatever adjustments you need. Especially the further back you go, the less they hear. So make notes next week to make, if you have a lot of percussion going on, that you give them attention. You either look at them less while you're working. You don't have to stop and say play softer. say, you know, just look down and a little less so that they know. We're on 345 in the book. So as I said, about half an hour. So I'm talking about inclination and tuning on 345, starting at the top. I'll just paraphrase myself. So we already talked about, you know, the imagery, and we tune by having the tuning note in our head. We basically frequently, at least in the orchestra, we tune to the string basses and the contrabassoon, the bassoon, because that's where all the overtones are. On the clarinet, all my notes are in those low frequencies. All I have to do is tune to that. If I'm doing a record date with piano or something, it takes me about 10 minutes to retune my brain to a tempered scale, because I play an acoustic scale. And I'm playing out of tune until my mind readjusts to the tempered scale. We know that it's not a very good tuning. That's why the bells so often and chimes and sounds out of tune in the orchestras, because it's tempered scale against an acoustic scale. And the notes are different. Right? I play a C as a third of an A flat chord, or I play a C as a fifth of an F major chord. It's two different C's. It's not the same note. It's the same note on the piano. So we have to develop a sense of tuning with our students. And some type of chorale is possible. Here in reading it says, a tuning chorale is helpful at this point. There are many collections available. You can get, there's some in the book. In the book there's one band and there's one orchestra. So if we look ahead at that, you need some type of material to teach phrasing and intonation. So 349, we have the band tuning woodwinds, over the page, brass, and then band percussion. You're welcome to duplicate any of these pages or write your own, but you need something. If this is too many parts for your band, or doesn't work, you need something to begin to teach intonation. You can't just wait till it comes up in a piece and say, okay guys, we're going to tune now. No, tuning is something, a skill with your players that especially students, that they have to develop, which means we have to give it attention until they feel where their note fits in the chord and how you sense the overtones and how you fit in. And just verbally telling them we're out of tune is not good enough. We have to teach good intonation. And that's what this section here is about. Sometimes we play all these, but I think the book is very clear. I don't think I have to demonstrate. We can just talk it through a little bit. And this goes through in how to tune. Professionally, we usually tune the octaves first, unisons, octaves, perfect fifths, and then the third. That's the usual standard symphonic way we tune orchestras in the States. If the section leader's taking over a section or something, we usually tune the unisons first, then the octaves, then the perfect fifth, and then the major minor third, and the seventh if it's present, until we all lock in. Then the goal is what? As you change notes up and down, you got to keep that same focus. And we know students do what? As they change notes, they change pitch. They change the focus of the tuning of the instrument. So we have to make sure that we teach them and we coach them in that. All right, we get something nice and tune this. And as you change your notes, now keep that focus. Don't let things change just because you're going up and down. It says ultimately the conductor is responsible for how the ensemble sounds. Fine intonation is paramount. Okay? So you can look this over later. We don't have to read it all now. Just call to your attention. For next week, if there's intonation problems, besides tuning one note, you should take a section and tune it. Especially if we have some students. They tune one note, then they change the embouchure, and everything gets out of tune again. Okay? How often in the States, you see a guest conductor come in and they'll go down and they'll tune all the flutes. Some of them use a tuner. It's good for tuning the eyeballs. I don't know what good it is for tuning this one. I'll tune that one first and then this one. And they'll go right down and they'll flat, sharp, ba 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 ba. And usually sounds pretty good, right? They play two notes, it's all out of tune. They're playing that too. We build intonation over periods of time. As I said, when I guest conduct student groups, and I deal with building their imagery, and I believe that we're all born with wonderful sense of pitch. Some kids use it, some kids don't. If they don't, then we have to stimulate that somehow, right? And it's always been with me, the better, as soon as I get the band starting to phrase and be expressive, teach them how to breathe, get the imagery going, tone quality improves and pitching improves, and I didn't mention either one. And it's going to happen next week too. You're going to hear as you address the phrasing, because you're in here. They're playing without this as a goal. Once you establish the goal, the instrument matches this. And your better players do it immediately. So that's been my experience for 35 years of conducting, especially with students. Okay, so that instrumental, now we need materials. You need materials to teach phrases. That's why this book is coming out. This book will be out. I'm proofreading, I'm writing the teacher's manual now. This is good. It's a 64-page book. It's called The Art of Expressive Playing, a study of individual, small ensemble, and large group performance. So I took all the phrasing principles in this book and added some that aren't in this book. And there's a woodwind book and a brass book and a teacher's manual. And each element has a unison presentation, so that everybody plays. If you wait for it to come up in music, the tubas never learn the phrase, because they're always playing 1, 5, 1, 5. They got the tune. So they're unison primarily, except for the accompaniment patterns that I put in, and they're in small groups. And there's a tuning chorale in here, and there's one chromatic, there's one diatonic. And the difficulty level's about 3rd and 4th year players. It's no good for beginning students, because they can't play all the elements. So this will be out in June. And as I said, the student book is 64. I recorded all the examples, and my brother and I, so that the teacher manual will have a CD with it. If you want to look this over during the week sometime, that's fine. So what I found is I carry with me, when I guest conduct student groups, 2 or 3 chorales like this, depending on the age group of what it is. And I teach all the elements of phrasing out of this. I might stop the rehearsal and say, put up the tuning chorale, if we're not subdivided. Now I'll ask for 8-note groupings, 2, 3, 4, 1 grouping. It's only half notes if you look at it. On purpose it's half notes with no variance if you look ahead. And I'll start each rehearsal with a little tuning attention. Not a lot. We build positive intonation by short periods of time and frequent addressing the issue. But this section of the text, it says instrumental ensemble teaching music chorales. Now, if you follow that procedure, it's all in here. Goals, how to use it, where I'm teaching tone, rhythm, dynamics. You can, all the groupings you can do by adding, I put the rhythm on the board if I'm in a rehearsal room. I put whatever I'm going to do in the half note to quarter notes. I teach accent and taper. I teach bold accents, and I teach 40 pianos, all with that chorale. It's accent and taper. Usually I take my horn and play, or sing, until I get everybody using this turn. All right? And I do, usually what I did the other day, I'll play a major scale without moving my tongue, just using the stern. Then I'll ask them to do that. Don't use the tongue and practice doing this. And pretty soon, in context of the music then, I can begin to use these things. So an accent taper, that, well, let's do that bold or something. So if you look at 346, we have suggestions for a homophonic chorale, just half notes. So you can work on your breathing and goals. Articulations, just assign a pattern, but play it with inflection. That's why that Michigan State, I forget what it's called, band methods is so nice, because it would come with it's all demonstration and imagery. The kids learn their rhythms by rote, by singing. So you got accompaniment going, they sing do, 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 and then each flashcard, do, 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 be with a rhythm on it. So first, but with inflection. It's never do, 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 be, or clapping. Nothing. No, it's always done musically. When the instructor demonstrates, it's always done beautifully. John Keane at Melbourne has done it for 10 years. He's not back this year. But he'll take a group of 6th, 7th grader beginners, and by the end of the week, with a few helpers, they are all playing with a magnificent characteristic sound and phrasing in 1 week, and good breathing. Simple little things, and it'll knock your socks off. Little kids swinging their feet around, playing, so beautiful. All the things we're trying to get ourselves to do. But it's, the whole system is built that way. Everything's built on developing the imagery. And the kids don't know any better. If you start them off that way, they think that's the way you do it. But if you let them play dull for a couple of years, then what happens? You got to reteach everything. Because we've taught in a dull manner. And that's some of the things you're going to go through when you go back. If you have allowed the students to play in a dull manner, you have to turn them upside down to change their memory bank. And in a positive way, which you can do. It just takes a little longer. We can practice crescendo decrescendo by taking one of the chords and doing 1 to 5, 5 to 1, 1 to 3, 1 to 3 to 1. Almost everything in this textbook you can do with that chorale. Pulse of meter, subdivision, goes on page 47. Communicating response. All those things will work. Now you go over to 348. It gives you some suggestions on maybe just in tuning, what to do with that. Then the orchestra chorale is on 252. And you have 2 sets of strings. You have just 5 parts of this strong. You know, when I write for a small symphony, I don't write a lot of division. Right? When you write for a big symphony, then you can go into 10 parts. There's enough sonority in the string section to support that many notes. God bless you. Oh, all right, anything else? I think it's there as a reference if you want to use that. But somehow you need materials to address, and that's what I do. I take that chorale. When this is out, if you're interested in it, and you teach on that level, as I said, it'll be 64-page woodwind book, 64-page brass book, and a 100-page director book with a CD. And hopefully, because there's a big push in the States on phrasing finally, but it's phrasing through repertoire. How do you do that? You wait for something to come up in a piece and address it, but everybody isn't playing it, so you can't teach everybody. Just, you know what I mean? So hopefully this will solve that problem. We haven't talked much about ensemble balance, so I need to, in the last 10 minutes of my session, address that. Would you turn to, where's the page? Chapter 23, 327. 327. All right, so as you prepare your scores, would you keep in mind the compositional elements, right? What are the primary elements? Melody, melodic harmony, those parts that are voiced in and harmonizing the melody, and counter melody. What are secondary elements? Sustained harmony, rhythmic harmonic accompaniment, bass line, non-pitched rhythm. And the open statement is, how, God bless you, how do you wish the audience to hear composition? Question mark. Are the compositional elements present in a clear manner so the true meaning of the music can be understood by the listener? At any given point, we may have just an unaccompanied melody or a very complex situation where there are many elements, 2 or 3 counterpoints in harmony and rhythmic, blah, 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 blah. But you have to be aware of all this in your preparation. If everybody's marked forte, then we use the plus minus, right? Next paragraph down. Okay, subtle adjustments must be applied to the different elements using gradations of forte. We could do forte plus, forte, and forte minus. Okay, like playing orchestral material from the classical period. You have one dynamic for like 50 bars. It doesn't mean it's everybody plays mezzo forte. It means that's where you start. Now you make the adjustments in the orchestration. So we need to look this over and keep it in mind. Now here's an example. Let's go to 327. Next page. 328. So this type of approach to your score preparation. On the left-hand side is the way the score could appear in the score. On the right-hand side is each element. And in the text, the students are supposed to phrase each one. So we have the melody in the trumpet. We have a counter melody in the baritone. Now I'm looking at the right-hand page. We have combined melodic and rhythmic accompaniment in the French horns, bass line in the tuba, and 2, 4, 6 percussion parts. So that all needs to be adjusted dynamically. Where would you consider as you're preparing your score? We have one dynamic given. That's in the trumpet. You're on the left-hand side now. So you have one forte. Now where would all the rest be related to that one given dynamic? Where would the flute be? We're the same thing with the trumpets. Forte. Where would the counter melody be in the tenor sax and the trombones and euphonium, baritone horn? Mezzo forte minus maybe. A little under the tune, supportive. Where'd the bass line be? Probably with a counter line because the sonority's there. All right, where would the alto saxes and the French horns be? Mezzo forte maybe. Working with the tuba. What else do we have? Is that about it? To bring the clarinets in, add it on, they would be forte again. In your percussion, you're looking at the claves, cowbell, maracas, conga, drum set. What's the most important Latin part there? And you say the clave is the most important rhythm, or backwards, or the other, or a variation of that. What's the most prominent instrument in that list? That you have cowbell, right? Well, you put some tape on it, a good Latin percussion section. They really take care of the ring of the bell, using some tape if necessary to get it exactly the way they want it. Maracas. And there's two techniques. You either shake them back and forth, or you snap the beads up and down. And you can play tunes on the maracas. I can. How you flip the beads up and down so they fall like one group, just in the wrist. So you snap and the beads inside go. You get one. You don't get a rolling sound. You get a snap. If you want a really loud sound, a good maraca player will snap them back and forth if he does. And again, by how you jerk, you can create inflection. But even in your rhythm, you don't want this going on. Right? You don't want steady. You want to vary the accents a little bit. Same principle as the ride hat, those of you who do stage bands, right? You can play tunes on the hi-hat as you keep time, but they should not be all the same. So anyway, keep in mind as you prepare your score, what dynamic level you're at, and then the more expectations you have, the easier to rehearse it is. The more you have preset in your mind, how you want to hear the score, and when it hits you and it doesn't match that, you can say, oh, you got to adjust that, you have to fix this and that, as opposed to what? Listening and saying, I wonder what I'm going to do with this. So just encourage you, you can hear more than you think you can. You learn to develop your imagination by using it, by really trying to hear things. The section on the aleatoric music, you can read at your own convenience here. It's not much on that. We covered that. Let me see if there's we read rehearsal techniques. That's in the back of your mind. I think that about finishes what I wanted to cover. Anything we talked about? Anything that I've got 5 minutes. Anything you want to bring up that you want me to address in any way? Any questions maybe you've had during the week, haven't had a chance to ask because we've been so busy? Well, we've got a few minutes now. And we will have time to talk next week because we have a summary at the end of the day. After we all finish, we come in here and I'll go through my notes and we'll have a dialogue. We'll critique each other in a nice way. Looking for positive things, not just negative things. What really worked well. Because when we build, we learn off of things that's why I keep saying on the tape, that was beautiful what you did, now try and start there next time. Don't go back there and work to that. Try and start where you left off, what it felt like, and what much fun it was to create some beautiful music. Start there, and then we develop from there. So if there are no questions, then we're going to start in 8 minutes with a set, and we do afternoon tea, we do another set, and we go home. Or I think we have to help set, we have to take some stands over in percussion. But then if we all help, we can do that in 10 minutes. Just so that when we come in Monday